start our meeting. Welcome everyone. My name is Lars Ruth. I'm the chairman of the Swedish-Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome to this Fika talk that we're doing today, presented by Volvo. Just letting you know that our presenting partner Volvo is going to provide an opportunity to enjoy a 7-day luxury driving experience in one of the elegantly designed Volvos, and we're picking a draw winner from all you participants and announcing it after the Fika today. So that's very cool. Best of luck with that. I know also some of you have won a Fika box and been sent to you, so I hope you are enjoying some good coffee and sweets as we get into our Fika. Just briefly mention what is a Fika. Well, a Fika is a Swedish ritual or tradition, if you will, where you take a short break from your daily routine. Often you do it together with your colleagues, other people. You can have discussions about all kinds of things. Of course, it'll be the usual, maybe hockey or sake, but very often you'll talk about your work, the problems you're facing, and what you're having, interdisciplinary meetings, and often good things come out of them. A Fika break is usually just 15 minutes, but the good ones will result in follow-up meetings, activities, and projects, and sort of that's what we're launching into with our FikaTalks series now. So we are encouraging all of you to participate. Please ask your questions, etc. Towards the end, we're going to actually open up, and so you can be on camera to post your questions. But meanwhile, please feel free to, in the Q&A or in the chat, share your thoughts, because this is what it's all about. We want to share, we want to learn, and help us all move forward better. Today, we are going first to connect back with Wayne from MindSuite Metrics. It's from our last meeting, so I'll shortly hand over to Wayne to talk about that. But then we're also going to hear from another interesting company, Winningtemp, with Tim Conroy is going to share some of their progress, thoughts, leadership ideas. And we also have Lisa Phillips, which is a customer service experience director from Volvo, and she'll share and connect some of the experiences Volvo has had during this last months. Wayne, I'm going to hand it over to you to set the stage a little bit from where we left it off last time and presenting the results from the survey that so many people participated in.
Thank you, Lars. We're just going to do the share here. Can everybody see that okay?
Looks good.
All right, perfect. It's always good to have the first nudge into technology work well on these things. And just first off, I really like to thank the Fika teams. I've been quite inspired after the last meeting, and have heard some great feedback from people who were a part of it. So it's an inspirational purpose, and it's just a wonderful program. And also wanted to thank Matt from Volvo. Interacting with him and hearing about some of the amazing things that Volvo's doing for its people and the culture through all of the challenges that we're going through was terrific to hear as well. And then Adam for getting all this stuff set up. It's just a great group. So what I'm going to do is just really quickly, because there's some new people here that weren't at the original, but there are quite a few people that were. So I'm just going to run through a really quick update on it, because we did put together what we call a pandemic checkup, and we shared some of the data that we had. And then since that time, we opened it up to the people who participated, and we were just under half, actually, once we finished up, 18 people of the, I don't remember exactly what the exact number was, but it was a significant number, very representative of the group. And what we're going to do is share those results back very quickly as before we move into the Winningtemp part of the program. So what it is essentially is the program, as we call it, the Pandemic Leadership Checkup. And what that does is it works with a number of different themes. And just to give you a quick idea on the themes, obviously we understand today with the challenges that leadership is facing in resetting their organizations and their communities, the work-life harmony is top of mind. It's not the same as it used to be, because now we've eliminated a lot of the differences between the two, and a lot of times people are working from their community for their organization. And there's some complexities that are occurring that are really quite challenging. And some of it is that people feel disconnected from it. Another is a lot of people, and we've learned this in our research, especially in larger cities, are not connected to their physical community where they live as much as they are to their work community. So there are all sorts of different things playing themselves out that way. And we're all very aware that human culture is critical to performance and sustainability. to support culture, human analytics is moving from just a niche function into a leading function. And we're seeing more and more of that. And you're going to hear some great stuff that Winningtemp is doing in that field as well. Well-being is critical to culture and is one of the core components of it, although it is not measured and used as often as it needs to be. And it has a massive impact on organizational culture, and culture has a massive impact on health and well-being. And it's very much an interrelated component. And the other one is that we love to use the term is the humanity and the case for humanity and how we treat each other. And that was one of the key areas that we measured in this. And we developed a very unique model that that measures actually our humanity towards each other. And it's not woo-woo, it's not kind of weird. It's very, very functional and very measurable. And the impact that that has on how people treat each other is very, very significant. And the other part is that great data can optimize decision-making, right? There's, as we say, there's no greater civilizing factor than good data, not some of the data we see flying around, but the good stuff that actually comes from people is very representative of what they're thinking. And it helps to break some of those cycles of division because people have far more in common than they think they do. And when we show those areas of alignment, it's very, very powerful for people. And good data creates these cycles of collaboration because it can stop the agenda pushing. And essentially what it is rather than what we think it is a key part of it. And, you know, too many decisions are made using the wobbly two-legged stool of financial and operating. And we need that stabilizing third leg, as we say, as we go through. We've created a GPS, and I'm not going to get into the detail of it, but it certainly led into this. And we call it the human GPS. And it really is is for possibilities, the global possibilities and in that particular area. But the key factor here is getting alignment. Alignment doesn't mean agreement. Alignment means alignment. So when we co-create and identify problems together, it allows us to align towards a better outcome as we're working through. So it can be it's very, very powerful that way. And you know, and we're not going to get into all the detail here, but the model you're going to see in some of the results is a summary and entry version of a more complex model that deals with the systems and processes that we have, human well-being, the outcomes, which is greater collaboration efficiency. A lot of organizations focus on, we're doing collaborative work. Well, collaboration is actually an outcome of a lot of these other things working well together. And that's where the power is of the process. And obviously there's multiple stakeholders. It's not just single ones. And a lot of the stakeholders often think differently from a couple of different perspectives. What you're going to see here is a core measurement on what we call the expectation gap index. And that's the difference between how important people think something is and their level of agreement that it's true or their level of satisfaction that it's working. So an example here is agility. We're able to adapt quickly when things change or they don't work out as planned. You'd be amazed how many people don't necessarily score this as highly as others do, and in different areas. So we do that, and then we also look at what is your level of agreement that this optimal state is working. And what comes from that is what we call our expectation gap. So if they're equal, if they say, yeah, it's really, really important and we're really, really good at it, the score is 100. But if they say it's really, really important and we're not so good at it, it's a percentage of expectation. So it could be 75 or 60 or whatever. But the magic in this is the fact that if it's really not important, but it's working really well, it could be above expectation. And if it's above expectation, that offers a couple of questions. One is, are we putting resources into an area that we shouldn't be? Or the other is, do people understand why it's important? And should we work on the educational components of what we're doing? So it does allow us to have those types of incredible conversations as we go through. And it's based on a core, what we call triadic model, which is very similar to finance, operating, and human analytics. Everything needs that stability of a triad in the work that we're doing. So ours is get people aligned around a common outcome, help them design that outcome, and then refine when things don't work out as planned. And all too often, organizations get into the design phase. Here's our new plan. Oops, it didn't work, back away. Let's put a new plan in place. In they go. And they don't spend the time to get people aligned or prepare for refining and the changes in systems that go on. And in the pandemic checkup model, we have the three core areas of culture, well-being, and humanity that we measured. And that triad has an impact on performance from a human perspective. And a lot of this is work that I've done with New York Times bestselling author John King, who wrote Tribal Leadership. And John asked me to currently, and I'm co-writing the follow-up with him right now, we're calling it Tribal Possibilities, but it's based upon his culture map model. And if you're not familiar, I highly recommend having a look at some of John's work. So what I'm going to do now is just show you some of the results on the dashboard as to what happened with this particular one. So now you can see here, and this is the dashboard, so there's a questionnaire and things. So with the pandemic checkup, we looked at the strategic elements, and I'll show you what those are in a second, cultural elements, character and humanity. And the character and humanity model came from some work that we're doing with Arizona State University in partnership with them. It's our systems, but they're an academic partner, and we're actually looking at partnering with universities here in the Greater Hamilton, or universities and colleges here in the Greater Hamilton area. And essentially what we did is we isolated key humanity metrics and looked at measuring those using very easy and accessible language as we go through, which I'll show you. And then the other area is wellness and well-being, which is something that we've been measuring for many, many years now with Alberta Health, with Heart Stroke Foundation, with Mood Disorders Association, and everyone else, and developing those particular ones. When we did the pandemic checkup, and a lot of you who did it would know that we asked you to think of it from two perspectives. One was we asked you, how would you answer the question? We asked you how important it was, and then we asked you, how would you answer the question now? And how would you have answered this pre-pandemic? So you can see that there's been a very, very significant drop based upon the information that we had from the 18 participants who participated in the program. From the last one, you can see that there's been a significant drop in the strategic elements. There's been a significant, not as significant, but a significant drop in culture. And you can see that there's been a very dramatic drop in the wellness and well-being. And we have been doing predictive analytics for over 30 years, almost 30 years now in this area. And when we see these types of numbers, especially when we're working with an organization, they may still be making money at this point because humans can run on resilience and energy. I use the analogy that if power goes off, your computer goes off, but if power goes off, humans can still continue to work. So a lot of times companies are making money in spite of the fact that they've got a real wellness and issue with their employees. And if they don't get ahead of it, then 2, 3, 4, 6 months down the road, there's a significant breakdown. And we're not trying to be negative on this, but we're trying to be predictive and let people know, here's some of the things that you could be faced with in the next little while because of the significant drop. Just a real quick look now at some of the different elements that come out of it. So if we look at the strategic elements, you can see that here's the things we looked at. We looked at things such as agility, the customer themselves, our purchasing process, strategy, et cetera. So you can see that there's been a very significant drop in our agility and our ability because a lot of people feel frozen with what's been going on. People feel they don't really understand their customers as much because the customers are going through a very similar struggle. Decision-making has dropped rather dramatically. So you can see how these numbers play themselves out. Now, when it came to cultural work, you can see that some dropped a little bit as we went through, but most of them kind of held in a little bit. Leadership's ability to share long-term goals with people has been a fairly dramatic drop. Even the short-term goals has dropped a lot as well. So these are areas that are pretty significant for people. And now, if we also get down to the wellness component, and we can see here where some of those are, you can see that being a healthy eater has dropped dramatically. Exercise, even though people are at home, they're not actually exercising. A lot of people would, they would go to gyms and et cetera, et cetera. And in the winter, it's difficult quite often for people as well, especially in the northern climates. People are not falling asleep well. They're not feeling rested when they wake up in the morning. They don't have energy left at the end of the day. So there's some very significant drops with the group here in terms of what they are. Anxiety is much higher in a lot of cases because, there's extra things. Sometimes people are at home, the whole family's at home all day long. That can create extra conflict and problems as well. Now, the good news that comes out of this whole thing is the fact that the humanities scores have gone up dramatically. And we're on a bit of a mission now in sharing that with people because this is something that we need to keep. And you can see here, for example, charity and generosity has bounced dramatically with all the difficulty that's going on. So people are going out of their way to be kind and generous to others. People are showing more compassion for other people. Diversity and inclusion, even though you wouldn't know it necessarily from some of the press, is actually improving in a lot of people's minds. And these numbers are consistent with the other numbers we've had on a broader case as well. So you can see that there's some very, very interesting components: friendliness, integrity. The one that's, respect is pretty well around the same thing. Temperance is another one that's fairly close. And actually was one of the few that, kind of didn't go up as much. But people are still losing their temper, but we're being more compassionate and understanding of those types of things. So it kind of gives you a bit of an idea that yes, our well-being is taking a toll, and there's been a drop from a cultural perspective, communications point of view, but there's also been a very significant bump in humanity. And how do we resource that? How do we support that? How do we make sure that we keep that kind of thinking as we move back into whatever our next new normal becomes? And that's about it. I think you'd want to open it up potentially for questions a little bit later, but we wanted to give you a bit of an idea on some of the information we got back from 18 participants from the last program.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wayne. Of course, there's some good news in that, but also, of course, some red flags and warning signs. And of course, everybody who participated in the survey know their organizations. And clearly, there's some things in the wellness element that, yeah, it's probably a good idea to react to those now and try to turn them around, if you will, right?
Lars,
as much as
we'll
as
give you a
we can.
summary report. So anybody who's on here wants to let the chamber know, we can give them a summary report if there's some interest on their part in the data.
That is great, fantastic, Wayne. And of course, we encourage, if anyone has questions, they can contact you. We'll make the contact information available so that they can see those things. Right? I'm now going to hand it over to Adam Ayers. Adam is with Grow the Good, and he is one of our members of the chamber. He's been very instrumental in bringing high-level subject matter experts to our FIKA series. So, Adam, please.
Thanks, Lars. And thanks to everybody at the team of the Swedish Chamber. It's been really cool and easy to find energy to make contributions. On behalf of the group, Wayne, thank you very, very much for sharing your insights. Quite frankly, if you're responsible for people, if you're a leader or responsible for relationships, being a leader is challenging before the pandemic. And there's lots and lots of reasons for that. The amount of complexity that's growing, people being asked to do more with less, that is across the board everywhere. I'm going to segue into introducing Tim from Winningtemp, because I, in my professional life, have been working with large organizations forever. And in large organizations, salaries represent probably one of the biggest costs. And we weren't used to measuring our biggest cost. We do the typical, survey of our people. And we had very, very old-fashioned tools, very expensive management processes to care for our most important resource. And I was introduced to Winningtemp when it was a real baby in Gothenburg in Sweden, where there's only a few people there. And somebody introduced me and said, this is a really cool piece of in the toolbox to manage people, to create engagement, to flesh out great ideas and contributions. And I've seen that company grow significantly, and especially now over the last couple of years, because they've got something that's really, really important. And, as complexity grows, our task is to try and find simple solutions. And simple in face of complexity is the opposite of easy. And I think Winningtemp is really onto something. It gives you the tools to allow you to pivot in times like the pandemic. And I hope when you see this, some lights will go on, whether you're in the HR space or if you're managing customers or students or whatever, to create an engagement and connectivity is more important than ever today. So with that, Tim, I just sold your service. So go knock it out. Okay.
Thanks very much, Adam. That's really appreciated. And it sounds like we should be doing more of this stuff together. And nice to meet you all. And thanks also to the Swedish-Canadian Chamber of Commerce for having us today. So I'm responsible for Winningtemp in the UK, and from humble beginnings in the second city of Sweden, we moved out and opened in the UK in 2019, but we're going global. And our plan is to very shortly be joining you in the North American subcontinent as well. And I'm assuming people see my screen, so if that is not the case, I'm sure someone will have protested.
Yep.
What we'll be looking at today is some of the data that we captured throughout the pandemic from across all of our clients. And it will tell us quite a lot and actually build on Wayne's points about how people have found working during this challenging period, but also what's being learned and how does what we're learning from the pandemic actually constitute an opportunity for the future. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we can deal with them as they come, and we'll also wrap them up at the end. And there's an interactive element in this also to try to emulate the spirit of a fika. So please grab your phones because we'll need them later for a quick input from the audience. And to build on Adam's background, what we do is we use artificial intelligence to conduct employee surveys in a new way. And it means they're constant and only take a few seconds and are very simple to participate in. And then on a fully automated basis, the platform incentivizes and nudges leaders to be the best leaders they can be to improve their team's motivation, productivity, well-being, and crucially staff retention. So thanks again, and here we go. So I think you'll recognize this symbol, and we all know that for many of us on a personal level and many organizations, COVID has been a bit of a challenge. However, the pandemic's reshaping how we work in our economy, and many individuals, organizations, companies, and other entities are adapting and finding new ways to be successful. And that's what we'll zoom in on today. And this is a theme we've been working on for some time. We've been working with external parties such as Josh Burson, who's an HR thought leader. And it started as a project to provide support and guidance to our client base. And because we've been doing this, it means that lots of the background materials, further reading and content is available, such as blog posts and podcasts, and you can download them with the link there by going onto our website. And back to the leadership topic, we've seen that leadership in general has been forced to shift to a more autonomy-friendly mode. And of course, digital transformation and so far that empowers leadership has been supercharged by the home working. It also seems, at least to us and many others, that it's unlikely that when the pandemic comes to an end, things will revert to sort of the pre-pandemic state as well. So maybe some of Wayne's changes that he points out will remain. And when I was researching this in Canada, it seems that only 1 in 5 Canadians who've been working from home want to go back to the office full time, according to a recent study by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So the theme of today is, this is a fantastic opportunity to not only make the most of the challenge we're facing right now, but to take the learnings to continue to improve organizational performance by taking what's being learned into the future. But before we start talking about what we want, and to make this interactive, because a fika is of course an interactive event when you talk with each other, although that's difficult to replicate fully in a webinar, I was hoping that maybe we could do this through another Swedish platform called Mentimeter. So you can take any internet connected device, such as your phone, and if you go to menti.com and enter the code 5168544, and then the question you'll be asked is, what post-pandemic people and leadership challenges can we, or are you expecting? Because I'd love to hear what you think, and we can also share these results with all of you afterwards, of course. And I'm going to jump to the web browser, and we should be able to see these results as they come in live. So we'll just take a minute here and wait to see what shows up. This is fantastic. Please keep the comments flowing. And it's interesting, just reflecting over some of the conversations we've had with potential and existing clients. Lots of people are talking about the team chemistry, getting people to work together, morale, because people have been disconnected from each other. People haven't been collaborating, and in some cases, people haven't been working in hard-hit sectors. So to get back in and from day one to start work together in a well-motivated environment where people are engaged is something we hear a lot. Thank you very much for your contributions. And it seems like motivation, anxiety, and engagement are remaining. We've also heard that perhaps some of the productivity, confusion, some of the issues that people have had through this period with bereavement or whatever it might be, are sort of, there's a fear that these issues will come into the office, into the workplace, and impede people's ability to work together. Thank you very much. This is brilliant, and they'll be part of the recording, of course, and we can share these. I'll send a file over afterwards. And returning to the topic at hand, let's head on. So in addition to your insights, and thank you again, we continuously ask our clients how people in the organizations that we work with feel about their workplace. Often we do this on a weekly basis. And it's provided us with an interesting opportunity to look at what the COVID impact is, both what's been difficult, but what's gone well. And as a background to the data you see here, we work with about 700 clients worldwide and have about 140,000 people who fill out the Winningtemp questions on a returning basis and continuous basis. And all in all, that means we've looked at a total pool of about 10 million data points for this, based on our real-time surveys. And we asked the data scientists, how's engagement? How's employee engagement, which was one of the topics you highlighted and Wayne also touched on, been affected by the pandemic? And the data science team then looked across all the data sets to figure out where most volatility has resided. And these 4 subtopics on engagement are the most volatile. And in summary, we can see there have been ample challenges, and we know that, I'm sure, both personally and anecdotally, and we're yet to see the full impact of COVID on, say, mental health and well-being, anxiety issues. But it's not always as bad as we might think, or is it? So the 4 charts here are all a cluster of questions assigned to each of these sort of general topics. And commitment, and by the way, they start in the beginning of 2020 and they go to the end of January 2021. And commitment is themes such as, does the employee feel that the organization's long-term goals are important? Do they feel that their work brings out the best in them? Leadership is stuff like, are goals clear? And do check-ins or chats with your manager occur frequently? Work situation looks at workload and if there's enough time to finish one's work tasks. And these 3, actually, commitment, leadership, and work situation, they're all positive. Looking better now, or at the end of January 2021, than they were in January 2020. However, job satisfaction, measuring themes relating to work as fun and enjoyable and some well-being issues, is a lot less rosy. And while the first 3 here trend positively, it shows that some aspects have been not only important, but actually really appreciated and seem to be working well. But also one of the points from the podcast made by Josh Burson was that being engaged in your work doesn't actually mean that you're enjoying it. And you can see here in the job satisfaction data set, that's not improved at all. It's actually probably getting slightly worse, and it's gone up and down quite a lot. And this is worrying because job satisfaction here is predictive for any team that they're going to lose staff really, really soon. And so if we come back to a leadership perspective and we ask what might be worth emphasizing as good management given these findings, here's a really summarial take on what pops out to me. First of all, it's a time of intense change. People have gone out of the office, work from home, some are coming back, motivation's different than before. And this makes collaboration and teamwork more important than ever, although it's also, as you pointed out in the Mentimeter, one of the key potential issues. And one of the points from the podcast here was also that Where people don't collaborate but compete, these types of organizations and teams can have the highest growth rates. However, if you're focused on competing, it becomes more difficult to adapt and find new ways of working. So in a changing environment, building collaborative teams and a collaborative culture is key to success. For the next theme, MySearch, an HR platform, analyzed Google search data during the period of March to June last year and found that the term back to work anxiety had increased by almost 600%. And the term fear of returning to work increased by 200%. We therefore feel that the next theme should be listening with compassion and humility. And also tying back to the podcast, this is another comment that rings true to me, that most people want to do really well at work, but when they're not, there's something that's hindering them. And we need to, as a leader, understand what that hinder is and aid them to perform better, to unblock the path ahead. And people do, by and large, according to data, seem engaged with work. But this doesn't mean that people are feeling well. So there are pressures affecting people's ability to do well. And gone is the time when you had an office and at home, and you could say, well, don't focus on your home issues while you're in the office, because the office and home are now one and the same place. The next theme here is inspiration. So we know you don't have the same sort of coercive style. Oversight is not an option. And by the way, I think that's a really good thing. So another way to motivate people and maintain productivity is to make sure that everyone's reconnected with the vision and the purpose of what your team and your organization do. That's a great carrot and a fantastic motivator for most people if you're working somewhere with a meaning of some sort. And finally, and this list, by the way, is not exhaustive, clarity. Clear goal setting, clear responsibilities, clear resources and mandates have never been more important than now. And perhaps one of the easiest things to address as the people or leadership team. So to round this up, how's an opportunity? Well, first of all, the right type of leadership drives how businesses adapt and reinvent themselves. Those who lead and engage are the key agent ensuring that your organization not only deals with the challenges stemming from the current environment, but employs what's being learned to avoid learning what was before. Looking at the data, we see it's important to note that although the situation is lending itself to high level engagement, this doesn't mean people are feeling well. Work's become a place perhaps where people go to avoid all other issues, and that means that in the longer term, we'll lose that talent unless we help them deal with those issues. That's why we need empathetic leadership. And for this reason, perhaps unsurprisingly, that's why we at Winningtemp think that you need to, on a continuous basis, break down engagement and leadership into the subcomponents, and through simple surveys, measure each component so you can look at what's going well and where do we need to improve. And thank you very much. I hope this was interesting, and any questions, just please let me know. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And as mentioned before, there are some links if you want to listen to the podcast or dig further into the topics we've discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Yeah, there's some very interesting findings and learnings for all our organizations here as we move forward. I thought we'd make a connect and share with some of our participants. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the question to Lisa with Volvo as well. Most of the tools that both Wayne has shown and Tim has showed is, of course, you can directly impact your employees. A company like Volvo, for them, the dealerships are very important. If you only look at the customer experience for most people who buy their cars, actually that mostly is going to come from an employee with a dealership rather than a Volvo employee, right? So here's a situation where you need to influence someone who's not really your employee. So Lisa, I just wondered if you could share some of your thoughts on your work in this regard.
Absolutely, yeah. So good morning, everyone. I hope it's morning for everyone, unless there's anyone on a different time zone, so afternoon or so. Yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, it's what we do anyway. We sell cars, but we sell cars through dealerships, retailers. So we're used to creating a vision and having brand values and working with our retailers to create the right customer experience. So as you're saying, we have layers. We have our own staff that we obviously had to pivot, and you heard a lot about that the last time. We have our retailers, what they're doing with their staff, and then what their staff are doing to impact their customers. So we had a lot of layers to break down. And interestingly for us, we also we couldn't help but almost take this pandemic as a personal challenge, because we've always stood very strong for our values of we are people first, you know, we are safety first. And this pandemic instantly brought up issues of people, exactly what we've just been talking about, and safety, which is rapidly morphing more away from, you know, safety only being seatbelt safety, which is where it started, but now into people's safety, environment safety, and culture safety. So we had to apply all of those thinkings and see elements and see what we can do to help our retailers. So what we did, first of all, is we set up a transparent way of communicating and a regular way of communicating. So yes, we all had to go to a virtual mode, but we set up regular meetings and we had discussions. What decisions and actions are we taking? Consulting with the retailers, what decisions and actions are you taking? Here's what we're doing with our staff. What are you doing with your staff? And trying to really, you know, we say collaborate is like, oh yeah, sure, collaborate, but we really did back and forth with them, like, how can we get through this together? So some things that we put into place with them were a very quick, of course, to issue COVID guidelines. How should I set my retail facility up and my process up so my staff feel comfortable, so my customers feel comfortable? And even before that, it was, first of all, looking at my team, like who is comfortable, who can come to the dealership still, who prefers to work from home, how do we enable them to work from home with digital means? So that there was a lot to work through there, but we were really quick to do that. The second thing we did is, obviously, as you can imagine, we have a lot of representatives always in our retailers, and on the customer experience side, we were always evaluating and having people in the retailers, checking the facility, checking the processes. The first thing we did is remove everybody. We're going to minimize the risk to your safety and take the physical presence away, which again presented us with that challenge of, you know, still being effective, still running an effective business and being able to sell cars. But then the third thing we had to focus on was that digital enablement. So how can we still conduct retail assessments, still get customer engagement, still have employees be productive in a digital way? And that was, you know, the third layer. And my answer, I can make my answer 5 hours long here. I'm so kind of passionate about this stuff, and I'm excited about what we've achieved so far and where we're going. But that's how we addressed those topics from that immediate position. And just one thing I want to share, when I joined Volvo myself, which was actually just over a year ago, I joined 2 weeks before lockdown. So my entire role at Volvo has been a virtual role. I believe there's still people here that I've never met yet. And I feel very much part of this organization because of the way that they brought me in, got me on video and collaborated with me. I feel like I know everyone personally, yet I've really not shaken any hands in a year.
Yeah, that's the way. I do believe a lot of businesses were able to pivot quickly because they were leveraging existing relationships. But of course, the challenge is when new people and new come into the mix, right? But with tools like this, it's a way to overcome it. Another thing, of course, is that sorry, it's the phone going on background. Sorry about that. What I was going to say is, of course, we saw both from Wayne's presentation that there certainly are some challenges ahead. We also saw from what Tim shared that job satisfaction, etc., is a concern. Of course, not everything is tied to compensation and such, but yeah, I just wanted to. Volvo Cars actually announced yesterday a great initiative that. Wherever you are in the world, if you're a Volvo Cars employee, we are going to ensure that you get a minimum 24 weeks of parental leave and your salary will be covered up to 80%. And
That's
I say
right.
parental leave because it's both for moms and dads, right? And for those who don't, this is a fairly common, if it will, happening in Sweden, but it certainly is not in many parts of the world. I just wanted to say, Lisa, how this connects with Volvo values, how it's been perceived, and maybe we can have Tim comment also a little bit on an initiative like this and an investment, because that's what it is. What can we see coming out of this? But Lisa first, please.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're extremely proud of this change, and proud and supportive of our colleagues now who get to have this benefit around the world. Of course, we've been fortunate to have this in Canada already, but I think some of the surveys that you had earlier showed that the diversity inclusion elements, because we all became a lot more people focused, but the diversity and inclusion elements have really started to grow as well in organizations. You've just shared charts on that. And again, that's where, same for us, there's a lot of efforts have been ramped up there. And when we're looking at people and how people are impacted, and we, of course, noticed that many people were impacted in the tough way when they had families and children at home, homeschooling, background noise, trying to have video meetings, all of those things I think played a role in us taking a look at ourselves and saying, are we treating our employees equally? Are we treating our employees and their circumstances equally? And that, I guess, I imagine is what led then to this global decision that, parental leave is important, gender doesn't matter. And I'm extremely proud that we've been able to do that, and it absolutely reflects our culture of family, safety, people first.
Thanks, Lisa. Tim.
I think that's fantastic, and actually having had a baby in the autumn, I think Winningtemp UK can learn a lot from Volvo. But this is great because it's not only helping people to do what they want to do, but it's also helping people to choose to stay with you and enabling people to keep Volvo as an employer. So I imagine that this not only shows a strong signal that you're really serious about D&I, but also helps staff retention in a really good and direct way.
Yeah, I was super sad to see your data there, Tim, on job satisfaction. I'm not feeling that right now, but it's definitely a good thing for me to reflect back within our organization too. And I believe we've got a good pulse on it, but great data to see, and maybe even to break down in terms of what does satisfaction mean. I mean, yes, we're not having parties anymore and group gatherings. We are doing virtual Fika though. So people probably feel a little like it's not as fun as when I was at the office. So is this job satisfaction circumstantial, or is it something that we can change? And I think that was a really important feedback from you for us to think about.
I can share some stuff afterwards.
It's a great reflection, Jason.
I
I just want to invite everyone who's on the call now. It's an open Q&A, so I'll hand it over to you, Adam. I saw you raise your hand, but anybody on the call, please, this is the time for you to ask questions to any of our panelists. Adam, please.
Yeah, I'm curious because leadership is about using your toolbox, and tools are evolving very quickly because the world is evolving quickly and tech is forcing the change. I worked for a company that had all the money in the world, and yet we were still old-fashioned. We didn't have the tools to engage. Sure, we checked our financials every single day. We were rewarded on sales and profitability and all the rest of it. And then we had consultants come in to ask the questions of the individuals, how are you doing? And they weren't well. And when people aren't well, they underperform. And when you underperform, it will show up somewhere on the P&L. So I'm really curious to know how many people are using tools like this or evolving with the technology that companies like Winningtemp represent. I didn't have that lens. I was rewarded by, when the market went well, everybody got a bonus, everybody was doing well, but it wasn't about money. It was about people's well-being. And they were struggling both physically, emotionally, and at different levels. And we weren't measuring retention. People were leaving secretly. They left with all their talents. We've invested years in a bunch of people, and some worst case scenario, they'd go to a competitor that didn't have the same market position that we did, but that was okay. They traded down because their values and quality of life were different. So money doesn't solve these things. You really have to have a toolbox that really promotes engagement and creates transparency, because we know that you can have all the strategy in the world, but once you deploy it through the ranks of an organization, if it's a complex organization, people on the floor and your customers don't know it. because it's not there. It's not measured. It's not on a dashboard. And this is the future. And that's why, you know, I took this on board and said, oh, this is way better than what we're doing. It's faster, it's more agile, and it doesn't cost anything compared to the, you know, the huge mothership of initiative that actually caused grief in the organization. So curious if we can find out.
Thanks for sharing, Adam. I know you have a lot of experience from leadership positions. So this is a report from the trenches very much. I know we're running out of time. We're going to take a few more questions if that's not. I see Richard Morin is raising his hand. Please, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I have a question for Wayne. I love these conversations, but it makes me think of the old saying about these strategies are more of a marathon and not a sprint. So how do you keep people engaged over a longer period? I mean, it's all nice to come up with a chart and a graph and explain, but a week later, a month later, how do you keep that graph climbing, increasing engagement and giving people a voice? And they can see 6 months later that, holy cow, things are changing and the culture is being addressed and we're moving the needle. And correspondingly, we can't take our eye off productivity and profitability, of course, but those things are all feeding in. So my question to Wayne was, in a forward motion, how do you keep and how much work does it take to keep these entities engaged over a long period of time?
Well, and that's a great question, Richard, because the short story to that, traditionally companies have done the annual survey, employee engagement survey, and people invest the time. The information goes off into a black hole, never to be heard from again in most cases, right? Because there isn't any ownership in the outcomes. And we find one of the big differences is when we invite people to co-create, share back, and then ask them to go deeper in areas that they've identified. And that's really some of the magic in it. So you participate in something and then you get an email back saying you and your fellow team members all agreed that we're doing this really well, because we don't focus on good things half the time. It's always what's wrong, right? That, yay, let's celebrate. Here are some things that you and your team identified that you'd like to see done differently. What are your further thoughts? So now we create a conversation, and we also, people have ownership because they were a part of the creation of it. And that, because people have ownership over financial results because they've been ongoing and they're part of the ongoing part. This is how we need to make the human side as well, so people can actually collaborate that way and feel some ownership. And that's where it all happens. When people feel that they're a part of something, they get involved. When they don't feel, you know, oh well, check, I answered the survey.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne.
All right, we have time for one, maybe two more questions. I'll leave it to all participants. Either raise your hand or send it in through the chat. Very good. Okay, very good. I will then just thank very much our panelists, Tim, Lisa, Wayne, Adam, of course, for your participation and sharing. That's how we all learn and how we all move forward. Also making of course, I should say, one of you lucky participants will enjoy a 7-day experience in a wonderful Volvo at some point, right? We will announce the draw shortly. And also our next get together in this FikaTalks series is May 6th. So look out for the emails, sign up for our newsletters if you have yet not done that. And feel free to reach out to the chamber or any of the panelists to continue the dialogue and learn from each other. So thank you all for participating today.
Thank you, everyone. Great to meet you all and happy to chat further. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
you all.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Great work as always.
Merci beaucoup.